speaking of, well,
so the next movie,
next movie's
big in my heart. It's
well,
one of my favorites.
Literally big on your heart.
I got the shirt right here. It's The Incredibles. This movie's big for me because I wasn't a big fan of Disney, but before this movie came out, Disney, Pixar, I was more like, that's for kids.
Right.
And before he
girls,
met me.
Before I met my Disney fanatic wife, of course.
You knew what was cool. Magic the Gathering. Yeah, you knew what was
PC
the cool
games. I knew what got the ladies.
Yeah,
right.
you knew what was the cool kids were doing.
Exactly.
They were playing PC games.
I have notches on my bed to prove it, guys. All right.
That's right. So
anyways,
Pokemon cards.
So much
Pokemon cards, yeah. Anyway, so The Incredibles was the first movie for me where, like, the first animated movie, cartoon movie, whatever you want to call it, where I was like, holy crap, this is so freaking cool.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. It's one of my top 3 favorite Pixar movies. Probably number 2. It's just a great movie. And it's the first movie, looks like, that was all handled by Brad Bird. Brad Bird directed, wrote everything and directed this movie all by himself. No help.
What's interesting about Brad Bird, he's the first guy outside of Pixar to come into Pixar because he
did The Iron Giant,
right,
which
and
is
that's
like fantastic.
Oh, amazing movie, by the way.
Harry Connick Jr. does a voice in that.
Who cares?
Just gotta throw that out
All
there.
right, so he comes in. Now Brad Bird obviously had a background with John Lasseter from California Art Institute, so they knew each other from then. Again, where all the genius was created in the world. I'm pretty sure if those people would have just put their brains to it, they could have solved every problem with cartoons. So Brad Bird comes in, and he has kind of a unique perspective because he says, look, there's actually a funny video of him in front of all the animators saying, look, you guys think you know what's best, and I've been out in the real world. I know what it's like. And he's in a precarious situation because he can't, you don't want to be that guy that comes in and says, look, I made the Iron Giant, because they're like, yeah, we made Finding Nemo, Toy
Story, bitch.
Monsters Inc. Like,
you're definitely on the same level, if not just a little bit under, even though you made the Iron Giant. Yeah,
but he was. I think there's obviously Brad Bird has big shoes to fill, and he's not part of that culture. He's coming in from outside. Now they say he brought a bunch of his inner crew from Iron Giant, and they make the movie The Incredibles, and of course another big huge success. I do remember seeing this in the theaters and thinking this felt different than any other Pixar movie before, and I think it's more of a result of the actual substance of the movie, right? Mm-hmm. It's superheroes.
It's one of the best superhero movies of all time.
Well, yeah, according to Gerald, it was one of your top. I think it was even like number 2 or 3. It was way up there. But I think what's interesting about this movie again is that it tells a story about. Everybody's interesting. The villain is gray. The villain is not this evil, I want to take over the world and destroy everybody. No, he has like actual motivations that make sense. Like you told me, everyone knows the
make everybody special.
Make everybody special. It's.
But I think also what isn't the villain in this movie is not just, what is it, Syndrome? Was that his name?
Syndrome,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, Syndrome, yeah.
It's kind of, and maybe we're just speaking from an adult perspective, but it's also Mr. and Mrs. Incredible's kind of marriage dynamic. Like, their marriage is in a sort of a little bit of a rut, so they're trying to work together to make everything, to bring everything back. And I thought that was a really interesting dynamic.
And it's about burying your true self to try to fit in and be normal. You know what I mean? And that's the thing about these Pixar movies is that they really do tell a much deeper story. It's like the best novel. My favorite novel one of mine is Animal Farm, right? Animal Farm you read as a kid and you're like, oh, it's these animals being mean to each other.
I read Animal Farm as a kid, man.
No, not as a younger kid. And then you read it as an adult and you're like,
Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what this movie does is it has moments of marital problems. It has problems. It talks about, being fitting
rut
in
your job.
Yeah. And being, and burying the things that make you special and just trying to be quote unquote normal when in reality, all it's doing to you is making you miserable. Mm-hmm. And then finally, doing the things that make you happy. And then it slowly works to undo everything that you hold dear, right? Their kids get in peril and all this stuff. But ultimately it becomes this great, story about, you should be the person you want to be. You'll be more accepted. But one of my favorite scenes of this whole freaking movie is at the very end is when I can't remember the little kid's name, Dash at the end when he's running because they won't let him participate in sports, and they're cheering for him, and then he goes fast and he's looking back and they're like, wait, slow down, and he lets kids come from them, and and
the other parents are like, what are you doing?
Right, and he's like looking back, he's like, oh, go faster, and they're like, no, just like third's good, second's good, like it's so enjoyable to watch this family that is in the beginning happy, then they go through this like midlife rut, and then they start to learn how to manage their life. You know what I mean? And the voice acting is great. You have Coach. Coach is perfect as Mr. Incredible. Like, what's his name? Craig T. Nelson. I think that's what his name is. Fantastic voice acting.
Where is my super suit?
Oh,
Samuel
Frozone is literally Samuel Jackson should just be in every movie. Like, I'm pretty sure
he kind of is, right?
He really is. It's just so funny. Like, oh my god, everything about that movie. Like,
the highway scene where they're landing. She's like, "You're gonna miss the exit. You're gonna miss the exit. I know where I'm going. I know where I'm going." Move across 4 lanes.
Also,
of traffic.
can we please talk about the genius that is Edna Mode?
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Edna Mode.
I love her. She's amazing. One of my other top favorite
No capes.
Pixar characters. Yeah.
No capes.
Yeah, and again, it's like the montages that they do in these, the beginning scene where it's kind of this timepiece. It's just
them back in the day.
Yeah, it's just so fantastic. What's also cool at the very end, they have 2 of the 9 old men, the original animators, the guys at the very end that say, "That's old school. Yeah, that's how I do it." Those are the voices of Ollie, and I can't remember the other guys.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's their voices. And it's just like, that's the thing that I'm telling you. Like, Disney, they make movies for everybody, but they always put something in there that nobody else would really get, and they get. And it's special to them, you know what I mean? And it's just fantastic.
Well, it's like the rocket car in every Pixar movie. It's like the A113 in every Pixar movie. Those little Easter eggs are...
Yeah, and that was the classroom that they all were in the Art Institute, right? A113.
Yeah, that's the number of the room that everyone starts out in. That's kind of like the
base. So these little nods, and you could tell they're having fun making these movies, and it comes out in the movie.
Yeah.
So, real quick, I just want to talk about, so up until Finding Nemo, the person in charge of music was Randy Newman. He did it for 4 or 5 films.
Randy Newman.
God friended me.
So then, for Finding Nemo, we got Thomas Newman, but for this movie, we have Gerald's favorite.
Because he scored last.
Oh, John Wallace, is that what it is? Or what is
No, Michael Giacchino. Oh,
Yes.
God, I probably did not pronounce that right.
Yeah, well,
Gerald just has, he loves him maybe even more than JJ. I'm not sure sometimes.
No.
But what I really loved about this is I was watching an interview with him about scoring this movie for The Incredibles, and he talked about, because they obviously let them see, like, clips and stuff like that they animate so that he can get a feel of what the movie is. And he talked about how he wanted to give it like more of like a throwback to like the old comics and stuff like that. And the music that he wrote for it it's very Bondish, 1960s Bondish.
It's fantastic.
yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I love that. Like, this is one of my favorite soundtracks.
Oh, definitely.
I love the
that or
soundtrack to
Monsters
this
Inc.
movie.
I like the best.
Yeah.
And again, it just shows like every detail is taken with these guys. Like, I can't imagine working there because they're like, oh,
It's too much pressure.
that one frame was a little too dark green. Rerender the whole thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, ugh. Good
Well, you were
Lord.
talking about Brad Bird coming in to fill these shoes, and unfortunately, he did not fill the shoes that were previously filled by Finding Nemo. Because even though it had a similar budget, it's $92 million, it only made, David, $631.4 million.
Well, I think...
And it was 97% Rotten Tomatoes, which I think beat Finding Nemo by 1%.
Yeah,
Nope,
so
never mind. Finding Nemo had more.
Okay, so...
Finding Nemo was 99.
So at this point, what's interesting to me is I also think Brad Bird, it shows that Pixar is bigger than it's larger than the sum of its parts. You know what I mean? Like it feels like because they don't make bad movies at this point that they're just like they have the secret sauce, they know what it is, but at the same time like they don't just iterate. You know what I mean? They're coming out with new and fresh, and this is when people like humans start to look better, I think. Mm-hmm. Even Toy Story 2,
definitely.
They don't look as good. Whereas here, they start to look more...
Well, this is the first movie where humans were the 4 point of the movie. Because before that, like I said, Finding Nemo, it's fish. Monsters, Inc., it's monsters. Toy Story 2, it's toys.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Monsters,
So,
you have Boo and stuff like that. But she's a little girl, right?
Yeah, but the forefront of the movie they're all human characters.
Yeah.
So that's
and
when
they look
kinda had to nail
fantastic.
it. Yeah, exactly.
They
look incredible.
Good one.
Guy,
Good
what I
one.
did there.
Can I also just say that The Incredibles at the parks, Mrs. Incredible always has quite the butt. Every single park, Walt Disney World,
That was
Disneyland,
fat.
every single time I see her, I'm just like...
What's wrong with you, Gerald?
Well, she is in the movie, too. She's definitely got the hourglass figure.
Figure? Anyways.
Do you want to do one more?
Let's do one more, and then we'll wrap up this one, because
Okay.
we're about halfway through the Pixar pantheon of genius.
All right, so speaking of never making a bad movie, we come to the next movie.
Well, this is, I think, where we all kind of disagree with each other. Gerald, at least.
Well, no, because this is like critically the worst Pixar movie up until this point.
Yes.
Rated.
Yes.
And we're talking about Cars.
Now, this is what's interesting about this movie. John Lasseter, the genius behind Toy Story, and I think he did Bug's Life as well, I believe.
Yeah.
He comes back, directs this movie, Cars.